Okay, so my name is Lilian. I used to work for FHIR IG, but yeah, I've been involved at NICTIS in the birth care project since 2019, and recently I switched to NICTIS. And I'm presenting today together with Michael Tan, who is also former employee of NICTIS, former product manager of child health and obstetrics. And he's also the HL7 co-chair of patient care work group. And we are working on an international project on fetus data that we want to present today. So first, Michael will tell us a little bit about the background of the project. And then I will take it over from there, talk about just a little bit about the methodology, and then dive into the results we have so far. And finally, some next steps that we will take. And at the end, there will be some time, hopefully, left for Q&A. So, Michael, if you're ready, I would like to invite you here.
Thank you. So just 2 slides from my part, because, you know, we want to really dive into the content, and Lilian is the expert for that. So, okay, so Lilian told that our project started as actually a kickoff from the meeting in Sydney. That was just before the Corona period, and we had this meeting in Sydney where people from other countries like Australia and UK came together and said, okay, we all do child health, and we all do obstetrics. We want to see what we can do to collaborate. So that's why we call it CHOICE, because it stands for Child Health Obstetrics International Collaboration. Okay, so and in the beginning is, of course, we are trying to see, okay, what can we do to really have added value to our cooperation. And it was looking for a little bit of the field of what is there, which is new, especially in the field of FHIR, which has not been dealt with. So one of the priority things is that we found is that people, if they exchange data about the child before it's born, they do it differently. Some use the FHIR resource of body tissue, and others are thinking of other way around. So there was a big question: is okay, how do we communicate data which is actually related to that unborn child yet? Because if it's born, of course, then there's no question it's patient. You can use the FHIR resource of patient. But if it's not born yet, how do we do that? So that there are some options which Lilian will explain. But of course, then once you have identified, okay, this is the solution, is okay, how do we make clear to the relationship between mother and child, and fetus in this case. So and of course it's a process of 9 months, as you can imagine. And you don't start with day 0 as if it was a separate subject. In the beginning, it's just very small and an embryo, and so somewhere in the process you decide, okay, let's if we communicate, let's attach it to a separate resource. And what kind of resource will that be? If we do relate certain FHIR resources to that subject, I would say, is how do we do that? And what is the impact for these FHIR resources? Because most of them, of course, are used to be, if they fill in the subject, they relate to a patient, or but can they also relate to a body tissue or a separate FHIR resource for fetus? So these are questions which we thought about, and in the beginning, we wanted to have a lot. You know, we wanted to talk about the data, we want to talk about these examples, but we narrowed the scope so that we can really tell the people that we are making progress. And in the end, we are also looking for other people who are interested to implement the IGs which we have in our mind to really bring it into practice. So from here, let's go very fast into the material. Lilian, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Yeah, so I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, just dive into the results we have so far quickly. But we started, of course, with defining some use cases, set priorities in the use cases, like Michael said. First, we wanted to do everything and answer all of these questions, but we really had to narrow it down. And then for each of the use case, we selected, we defined the data, defined the transaction, and finally the technical framework. And of course, we also looked at other projects like the BFDR and the MMM project for inspiration and also to align with models that already exist. So these are the use cases we have defined so far. And we picked the first 3 of them for our implementation guide. So we have worked out the FHIR examples for these 3 use cases, which are a service request. And I really like this use case because it really shows the need for actual fetus resource. Because the medication is requested when the fetus is still unborn, but the fetus is actually the subject of the medication administration that needs to be done directly after it is born. Then we have the result reporting. It's also a nice one because, yeah, how are you going to report the results of an ultrasound scan that contains both data of the mother and data of the fetus? And then finally, the data transfer, because I will show you in a later slide, there's a lot of overlap between the health record of the unborn fetus and the born child and the mother record. And a lot of this data is both medically relevant to the mother as well as the unborn or the born child later in his life. So we explored the following modeling options for the fetus. So first, yeah, we didn't want to rule out the body structure immediately. Also, a lot of systems already use this, and it is a common way to model it nowadays. And in a healthy pregnancy, it would be sufficient to do this way. But as I already mentioned, as soon as you are going to gather more data around the fetus, it soon becomes too limited. Now, then we also discussed a new resource for fetus, but it would have a higher impact on the FHIR specification because you have to make all these relations from all different resources to this new fetus resource. So yeah, we agreed that actually patient would be the best option, and it also makes sense because it is a living organism that is the subject of care. And for patient, we also discussed a couple of options how we could adapt patient to be able to use it for the fetus. So we came up with 2 ideas for a born status extension. To indicate whether the patient is born or not. So we have a Boolean value, true or false. And another one where we use a coded value in the born status. And the advantage of the second one is that besides born or unborn, you can also state that the fetus is demised. And we also discussed doing that by using the deceased field in patient. But actually, to be deceased, you need to be live born first. So, yeah, so we like to have that demised status in the born status as well, and also to be able to have an unknown field. We also discussed to put the data absent reason in the birth date element. With reason unborn. But the problem with this approach is that, unborn is a little bit of an outsider in the already existing value set for data absent reason. And the final one was to replace the birth date with a birth choice element. So instead of only having a birth date, you would choose between a birth boolean and a birth date. And then, of course, having a birthday implies that you are born. And we also put this on Zulip, of course. And we had some nice discussion on Zulip about it. And then, I'll come to that later. First, I want to show you how it works with the extension, with the born status. And also show you the overlap that there is between the maternal record, the fetal record, and the child record. So in case of a born child, you have, during the pregnancy, there's already data gathered around the mother, as well as the fetus. And then at some point it is born, and also a lot of measurements are done like birth weight, Epgar score, to see how the newborn is doing. And all of this data is, as I already mentioned, relevant for the mother, but also for the child. So part of this data is transferred to the child record. And then in case of an unborn child, we would only have the fetal record. We would never have a child record. And the fetal record, of course, becomes inactive. So so then in January, we have discussed our ideas for the options that I just discussed on the working group meeting there. And it was decided to include the born status extension with the coded value in R5. So I can show you. It is actually there. So here we have the extension with our born status value set. So that was actually a big step in our project. And the next step was to create a FHIR implementation guide. And I'm going to give just a sneak preview of this, because this is still very much work. Oh, it is not showing. Why is it not showing?
You're sharing PowerPoint instead of the entire screen.
I am sharing my entire screen. So probably on Zoom they are seeing it.
Yeah, it's there.
It's there? Yes. Yay. So this is still very much work in progress. But you see there's some background information of the project. We have a guidance section where we provide guidance for each of the 3 use cases we worked out so far. We still need to add a little bit more of actual guidance here, but I put it in the narrative and the graph that we built in CleanFire so far. And then, of course, we have a list of all the artifacts that we made. So for now, it's just a bunch of examples, and we still plan to create the profiles. And then there's a downloads page, and we will also add a section on terminology, but it's not there yet. Then I'll return. Oh, wait, where? Oh, it stopped sharing my presentation somehow. So I'll just go here. Yes, it's back on there. Yeah. So, yeah, just to explain, I'm not sure how I'm on time, but I think I can explain one of the use cases. So this is the use case of the medication request. So during the pregnancy, this fetus was diagnosed with detransposition of the great arteries, and medication request was done to administer the medication directly after birth. And then here you see how we have modeled this use case, and you see that we have a patient resource for fetus and a patient resource for the mother, and they are related to each other using the related person resource, which is also the common way to model this in FHIR. And then you see part of the data is related to the child. So we have a condition of the great artery, the detransposition of the great arteries, where the fetus is the subject. And we also have a medication request where the fetus is the subject. And we have observation of for example, the estimated birth weight for the fetus, because that needs to be known for the medication administration, which was done during the ultrasound scan. But then the subject of the diagnostic report is still the mother patient, and it's still part of her medical record. What else? Yeah, and the mother has a condition, pregnancy. We have observation about the gestational age. Yeah, I think that's the most important bit for this one. And then I think because of the time, I will skip this one. And then the next step is, of course, to finish this implementation guide, create the profiles, add the terminology section, and then we intend to ballot the implementation guide in the working group meeting of September this year. So yeah, it's a bit ambitious, but I hope we will manage it. So there's not much of DevDays left, but you can find me in the Hoova app, or email me or Michael. And yeah, and if anyone wants to join our working group, this is an open invitation. I think the more countries are represented, the better. So are there any questions?
Nice, thank you. Oh, great. Thank you very much, Lilian. I think we have some time for some questions. So,
I was wondering on the birth X, did you consider birth date time? Because, you know, for premature babies, especially the hour of birth and multiples is very important.
Yes, that's correct. And I believe there is an extension for that. Yeah, to add the birth time. Yeah.
To add another dimension that you probably haven't really been thinking about, have you talked to the veterinarians within HL7?
No, we didn't.
It's a slightly different perspective, but
yeah.
It depends on how generic you want this to be. I understand the current focus, but obviously there is no.
I think that would be a great idea, actually.
But Renee, why would we need to talk to the veterinarians? What's the?
You don't have to talk to them, but obviously they're facing similar issues,
Okay.
right?
They also have unborn animals. Yeah.
Hello, thank you for a very nice presentation. I was just wondering, when you transition from the fetus status to born status, how do you relate the information does it become the same subject, or do you make a new subject and link it? How do you facilitate that transition?
Yeah, so the idea is actually that you are still the same patient. You just get a different born status. So all the data is still tied to the same resource instance. And you don't need to transform all of the data, because the way we modeled it before, we modeled everything that is in the maternal records, the mother as the subject, and then the fetus as the focus subject. But then if you want to transfer it to a child record, you need to transform all of this data that is tied to the fetus and change the subject to the child patient.
Okay, so I have some experience like modeling children records when they're from 0 to 15 years.
Yeah.
It's just astonishing to see that at that point we have a lot of information about the parents as well. So it's still an issue, even though the mother and child is no longer in the same body or something, that
Yes.
it's still like exposure to smoking or your living status if you like have to move out of your house, like things like that will like continue to be in the record. So
Yes.
I was just wondering if there's a plan to go into like older children as well and say something about that or work on that as a continuation of this project.
Yeah, it would. I think we have the plans, and we also discuss this a lot. And of course you also get privacy discussions, like what part of the mother data is allowed to be in the child record. But what you say, smoking status, alcohol use, they are all very relevant to the child. So yeah, that's definitely something I would like to look into next as a next step.
Okay, we're already over time, so I would like to give Lilian a warm applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.